welcome everyone. My name is Marcin. Everyone has got always problems with my name, so it can be Marcin or Marcin. You call it. My name is Marcin, and I'm strategist, but some of you might know me as a technical architect, data architect, or even implementation specialist. But not many of you know that I'm also a chemist. That's why today we're going to talk about the chemistry. Okay? So I studied in Poland in a lab similar to this one, where I had carefully selected ingredients and my little small petri dishes and little containers with clean water and all that stuff. It was a bliss. But then we had a course of industrial chemistry, very big and dirty lab somewhere in a factory. So I was trying to find all my clean dishes and all my clean water. So I've asked my professor, where is all that gone? And he looked at me and said, well, there's a tap, there's a bucket with a mop, deal with it. Yeah? So all of this chemistry is very similar to our struggles with data. In a small lab, we have to deal with carefully selected environment of our small ingredients, just like with the data. We've got everything prepared in our spreadsheets. And in a factory, we have to deal with so many more different ingredients, so many more different situations. And very often, and this is the worst thing for me, deal with other people. You have to sometimes delegate what you do to other people. This is the worst. But for all of this, for all this data, we have to be really structured. We have to create our processes. And luckily, chemistry is very structured. It's so structured, in fact, that it developed its own language. I can talk to another chemist all across the world, and they're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about just by looking at this table. Would it not be great if we had our data structured in the same way? So we can have a one glance and we can understand exactly what the data is all about. Okay? And what about chemical reactions? We all know this iconography. It might differ from organization to organization or from country to country, but we know don't mix it all together because it's going to explode, or don't leak it because you're going to die. Okay? If we organized all our events in a very similar logic, that would be really great for someone else to understand it as well. And remember, this is almost our context to our data, in which data exists, what data represents, by looking at events that we collect the data from. With all these complexities of naming our data and naming our events and audiences, but whose responsibility is that really? That very often lies with marketing team or an IT team if they bother, or a DPO who's organizing all your data and all your structures. Very often I also see something called data council. Data council is almost like an organization responsible just for data naming and data usage, which is really great. But then you wouldn't necessarily ask a chemist to ask a farmer to use certain pesticides without considerations of how it's going to react with our food and what this food standards agency has got to say about it. Okay? And equally, food standard agency wouldn't be expecting the bank to give you a loan if you overspend on some chemicals because they're just better for the customer. And banks will have to consider how much the farmer could get by producing its produce, by shipping it directly to the customer. So all of this becomes like a spaghetti junction in Birmingham, all these relationships. It's very difficult to navigate who needs to talk to whom and what do they get out of it. Okay? So maybe there should be an organization all above it that says, okay, you can do this, you can do that, and maintain that contact between different parts of this equation. So very often, this is like an organization of kind of a government institution that can navigate all these relationships. So similarly with data, we have got all these different considerations to take into account, all these different budgetary considerations, all this regulation, processes, and so on. But who's going to be managing all of that for us? Okay? That's where the concept of center of excellence came from. A group of experts that sits within your organization to maintain the relationships and telling everyone what's good, what's bad, how this is all going to react with each other. But I don't really like calling this center of excellence because it is not just for us that we tell someone else what to do. It's a collection of experts, but not a collection of egos. That's why I call it Center for Excellence. And it looks much better as a logo, doesn't it? And we have to work with other people in our organization, other teams, to tell them and educate them what's good, and also listen to them what we can do with our data. Because there's no good telling someone what to do without knowing what they can do with it. My colleague Carl presented last year on a DV fantastic presentation about the Center of Excellence. But the main takeaways from it are those 5 pillars of Center of Excellence. We need to almost see all above what we're doing in our organization, almost like a change of paradigm of what we're trying to achieve without digging deep too much of what we're trying to do day to day. We have to oversee it and learn from it and share that knowledge with others. We also have to nurture successes to see what can happen if we're, for instance, not there, or if we want to move on somewhere else. And above all, we have to drive progress. So we have to innovate constantly. But who can do that? What are the people who can actually form this Center of Excellence? There's a couple of profiles that we can identify. A lead, someone who talks a lot, just like me. I'm not a leader. Someone who's going to sell the ideas to other teams. Okay? There's also a business analyst who's going to create all these different use cases, listen to different parts of your business, what is the need of them. And also the engineer who's going to have the understanding of how to translate the business needs into technical implementation. And how do we structure this team, you say? Obviously, we start with that big wig. That's what I call our top management anyway. Who's going to sell this idea to all the other teams. We're going to talk to everyone so we can distribute that knowledge to other teams. Usually, it's paired with another engineer who's going to do the proof of concept, just to entice everyone that these ideas are really good. And then we can start getting some business analysts. And I would probably invest more in those business analysts first before investing into the engineers, because they create the work for the engineers. 80% of the work that you do with Center of Excellence or Center for Excellence is actually on paper. It's not on a keyboard. So this Center of Excellence, it doesn't really matter all of that I've said if the Center for Excellence doesn't work with other parts of the business. It has to constantly talk to other teams, constantly progress, constantly create use cases, and so on. And to be honest, you have to create that little chemistry with all the other teams. See what I did there? So you can collaborate together and constantly innovate. I've put some links to other resources. I encourage you to check Carl's presentation from last year. I also put a link to an organization of the future, one take of how that Center of Excellence can be deployed and what's the benefit of it. And also, I encourage you to talk to us, not just strategists, but also your CSMs and so on, so we can help you, because no structure is the same for every organization. We can help you with our expertise to actually create that structure for you and see what's the best use of your money and all your investment into people as well. And if you ask me after the talk, I can give you a little secret of some of the blunders that Chinese researchers did with their research into the nanotubes. So ask me during the break time.